.com.
Welcome back. We're still watching Daybreak on this third day of July 2023, and it's time for us to have a conversation here on Daybreak, and especially in the matters that are affecting the country, the latest in the world of politics, but also what is happening to the state of affairs on the side of cost of living. In studio, I have John Kagusha, who is the Member of Parliament for Mukurweini constituency. Good morning. Then I have Anthony Oluoch, the Member of Parliament for Mathare constituency. Good morning.
Good morning.
Basil Ngui, the MP for Yatta constituency. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I have Dr. John Mutunga, MP for Tigania West. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to see all of you here. And let's get into it, because on the papers today, you see the main story on the Daily Nation is youth exodus, of how the younger people are seeking greener pastures outside the country. 20,000 passports that are pending. The Department of Immigration in saying that they can only process 700 per day. So it appears they need about 100 days to clear the backlog. Then inside Ruto plan to claw into Raila's Nyanza turf. President Ruto is on overdrive to make inroads into Azimio leader Raila Odinga's Nyanza backyard, and was set to visit the region this Saturday, barely a week after the former premier hosted a two-day mega event to secure his turf. President Ruto was supposed to visit Homa Bay on July 8th for the Thanksgiving ceremony of Interior PS Dr. Ray Omolo, and so much more. Then on the front page of the Standard, intrigues of missing school reform report. Task Force on Education Reforms was to hand over its final report 3 weeks ago, but promises to make it public have not been met, raising doubts on the recommendations that the 49-member team could have made. Then families come to terms with the Londiani tragedy, as the Kenya Red Cross has seen on that image. Kenya Red Cross volunteers in Londiani town helped residents to trace their loved ones, also counsel families that lost their loved ones. Of course, very tough times at such a time. And of course, let's start. Also, you see Malala in cabinet, little men whose words become law, is a story that you find on page 6 to 7 of the Standard about that controversial issue of the 4 people that took the oath of secrecy to also sit in cabinet. Malala's elevation, not to sit, but to attend meetings. I don't know that there's a difference. Malala's elevation came 3 days after he spoke about UDA launching an audit of CSS. Where did he get the guts to make bold pronouncements? And of course, it's a story that you can read, a case of trusted president's allies whose word became law. Let's begin by looking at the latest from the courts. We understand that on Friday there was a court order stopping for a moment the implementation of the Finance Act. This is in the case filed by Senator of Busia, Okiya Omtata, to the tune of this would essentially affect the implementation of several tax measures in it, including that touching on EPRA. And EPRA went ahead to announce the new prices. Now a litre of petrol in Nairobi is retailing at 195 shillings and a few cents, up from 182. Let me begin with you, Honorable Kagusha, because when you look at that decision, is it that EPRA didn't get the orders, or they just chose to ignore?
I have no idea. What I know is that everyone is bound by the court orders that are issued by the judiciary, and that should just be the case. So I don't know whether the EPRA did not get the orders or what may have transpired. Having said that, the issue of orders curtailing government from collecting resources, I think would still be, I don't know whether to say obnoxious, but it is a bit shocking that one would actually be issuing those kind of orders ex parte, where government is involved and where public interest is involved. It's good to sometimes delay just a bit and have the inter-parties, and then you can be able now to make a consideration after both parties have made their arguments. I would imagine that would probably be the best case scenario. Nevertheless, the judge has issued the orders. We should be bound by them until we go to court and make our case. And then hopefully the judge will be able to hear the government side and the public interest side. And of course, after that, make a determination of which, if either party is not satisfied, then would have to proceed to the next level of recourse. Yeah, so for me, we should definitely observe the rule of law.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say that the order to stop collection of revenue is obnoxious, I mean, it just stops the implementation of the new law. There's a law that provides how revenue can be collected. No,
the finance bill is the one that gives government power to collect. So the moment you suspend the finance bill, it definitely means that you have crippled the government from day one.
That's what I'm saying. The government is just being stopped from the new tax measures, but there are other tax measures that have not been touched. I mean, like pay will continue being collected.
From my understanding, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but I think the judge was actually suspending the finance bill.
Finance Act.
They gave the Finance Act. They gave a restraining order for government to implement the Finance Act, and of course, you see that looks like it might be way off. What?
That's what I'm saying, Honorable Kagushia.
Yeah.
Even if the Finance Act is suspended, for instance, the pay that is pay as you earn, it will still be deducted at the end of the month because they're using the Income Tax Act.
Maybe I could also ask you, do you think that then would be lawful if the Finance Act, which gives government measures on how to collect the taxes, is suspended? How does the government then continue to collect taxes? Because like this Finance Act, of course, had various measures. Yeah. So whether we are stopping just the new measures or even the old measures or the whatever, I mean, government works with a plan, and this is a new government. Each Kenyan knows that we are in a hole as a country, and the tax measures that we have to get now is like medicine. It's like a bitter pill whereby you have to take it not to die. But you see, the problem we have is that some people would have wished that Kenya sinks, so that the...
Who are those?
I mean, of course, we have people who have vowed by their gods that they are going to ensure that government doesn't either collect or function in whichever way. And, you know, government is very keen on meeting the obligations. Today, you hear a lot of Kenyans saying that they have challenges with cash flow because government is not spending as much. Why? Because government is using most of these resources to pay tax, to pay interest on loans that have been borrowed over the years. So government need to collect money so that can be able to spend. And once the government is spending, you will have cash flow even in Kenyans' pockets. And so you have people who have vowed that they will ensure that government doesn't function. And of course, they have said that openly. And they need to remember the words of President Obama, that wishing your government to fail is wishing your country to fail, and that is unpatriotic. And so we need to come back to the drawing table, all of us, and agree that indeed we need to offer services to Kenyans.
All right. We
need to have government collecting taxes and having resources sufficient enough to run government. Look, for example, we have Inua Jamii Kiti. The government is supposed to be releasing right from last week to this week, and the elderly people are waiting. I've been making rounds in Mukurweini the whole of last week.
They haven't gotten the money.
And most of them are very expectant. Yeah, I think they started receiving some money. Okay. They're receiving 8,000 for 4 months. But remember, there had been a backlog, so they will be receiving 4 months, and then they will receive 4 months this July. And if you say the government is not going to collect, do you want the government again to borrow this money to pay these elderly people social protection? Of course, you also know the schools have been also waiting for their capitation.
No, just a moment, we'll get into more. Honorable Oluoch, what is the truth here? So an order suspending the implementation of the Finance Act 2023, of course, EPRA has not complied, but does it stop government from collecting revenue, as Honorable Kagushia alleges?
No, it doesn't. The fact of the matter is there is a Finance Act in operation. We passed it in 2022-2023 financial year. It continues to be in operation until this one kicks in. And there are two things here to take into account. That government continues to collect its revenue, continues to collect in the light of the suspension of this current Finance Act. We continue to collect a fuel levy at the rate of 8%. Like you have said, we continue to collect pay as you earn. There are other levies and other taxes that the government continues to collect. Now, that's one point. I think the second point that we need to make here is about independence of the judiciary. And we need to allow the judiciary to be able to operate independently, irrespective of which government is in place. This government came into place by attacking the former government for its inability or unwillingness to take into account government orders, including the issue about judges. The government came in and in the first few days implemented some of what the government had not implemented, including the appointment of judges. So it would be incumbent upon this government to be able to give respect, due respect, to the orders of these courts. And IPRA is one of those agencies of government that is under duty to be able to respect court orders. The third point I think that we need to look into here is about transparency about the fuel levies that are put in place by IPRA. The fact of the matter is that the tariffs that we are now implementing under the current Finance Act should come into place to affect fuel that is in the high seas or about to be ordered, because that fuel has not yet landed in our market at the moment. Yet you are seeing that IPRA is already implementing fuel based on the current Finance Act. So we need to put that on the table and discuss about transparency on how IPRA operates and puts into effect its tariffs on fuel. You get situations in which fuel reductions are not sent back to the consumer when we have reductions on anything. But when you have an increase, this fuel perhaps was ordered when? I don't know how this works out, but the landing cost of this probably would have to be like 14 days, 1 month before. That fuel has been in the market. That fuel will probably be exhausted maybe in the next 14 days, depending on how long and how much bulk they order, so that IPRA ought to come out clean and tell Kenyans when is the fuel that is susceptible or subject to the 16% supposed to take effect. Has the fuel been ordered? How did they order it? Could they have ordered it the same day that the president signed that bill into law? Would that have landed and come into our pumps? So I think that is one thing that ought to be taken into account.
And you raise an interesting point, because if you look at what the impact of the Finance Act has been to fuel, initially the VAT at 8% was about 13 shillings 48 cents. Now it has gone up to, let me see that, it's 26 shillings 97 cents, which is just double. But the Railway Development Levy was supposed to reduce from, is it 2.5 to 1.5, and then you had the other levy, that is import duty import declaration fee, that was supposed to reduce from 3.5% to 2.5%. But in the new prices announced, that did not change. And you've been trying to get answers on why this has not happened, because now it's just the VAT increment that has taken effect. And Honorable Basil, what do you make of this, especially that halfway implementation of the Finance Act by IPRA, despite a court order?
Well, I think we are supposed to have respect to the court, to the rule of law, and what IPRA have done is actually contradicts what they are supposed to do in terms of respecting the law. If you go back to 2013, Kibaki left diesel at 102, kerosene at 79 shillings, and petrol at 109. Uhuru left it at diesel at 140, kerosene 127, petrol 159. That is 38 shillings in increment in 10 years. Ruto now is 179 shilling diesel, petrol 195, kerosene 173.4. That is 40 shillings in increment in 10 months. This is ridiculous, basically. So it means if we continue the same trend, within 5 years, we are expecting diesel to retail at 240 shillings. And that would be crazy for many Kenyans. So I think we need to respect the rule of law, and I'm really disappointed to see that IPRA is not respecting the rule of law. And the court orders have to be respected. Otherwise, we are going to lose the country if people cannot respect the court orders.
But yes, you make an interesting case about how prices have changed. But what do you do to the fact that during President Kenyatta's time, petrol was on a subsidy of 74 shillings?
Well, you know, if you look at the Kenyatta's time, still with the subsidy, it was actually cushioning the cost of living. But now, if you remove the subsidies, and then you increase, like, for example, what I've already given by 40 shillings per litre, things become unbearable. And we actually seen, even with the exodus of many youth leaving the country, because the moment you make business to be, the condition of doing business to be extremely bad in the country, people tend to run away because factories or investors tend to move to the neighboring countries. And that's what we are seeing. For example, if you go to Uganda now, it's easy to do business in Uganda. And if you go to Namanga or to the border points, you'll see many vehicles bringing products that are being processed in Uganda being brought to Kenya. So even the balance of trade between what you're importing and what you're exporting is becoming negative. And that is why we are saying, if we continue with the trend of increasing on fuel and making it or increase cost of living in terms of commodities, as well as for those who are doing manufacturing and making investors find it extremely hard for them to do business in Kenya, then, in other words, we are going to have a very challenging times for the nation. Yeah.
Interesting. And Honorable Mutunga, so what do you make of this, and what should governments do? Because apparently you can clearly see that IPRA did not follow the court order alongside what other panelists have said.
First of all, I want to dispute the fact that the cost of fuel in Uganda is cheaper than Kenya. That's not true. A liter of fuel of petrol in Uganda at a pumping station is 5,200 Uganda shillings. Divide that by 26, you see how much it is. It's between 195 and 201. So it is not cheaper in Uganda as we compare with Kenya. Number two, Uganda does not subsidize its fuel. Kenya has been subsidizing its fuel. And we know what subsidization led to. It was a mechanism of siphoning money from the exchequer. The other issue is when you look at the cost of, when it comes to VAT, Uganda charges 18% VAT. Kenya has been charging 8% VAT. With subsidization and all that, then you hear some of these figures floating. Now, the issue is we need to face reality. We have a problem, and the problem is an economy that is not functioning. To make this economy function, we must struggle to fuel it. And the only way you can fuel it is giving it some resources. So one of the ways of raising money is actually, looking for ways and means within ourselves, from within. The second issue I want to dispute is the fact that we should change VAT, the increased VAT on fuel that comes in. This VAT is not levied on fuel that we are importing. It is levied on fuel that we have here. So whether we change it now or later, it doesn't. In fact, whatever there is, you just change. Why? Because this is an internal matter. It's an internal revenue generating mechanism. So the VAT, the 8% VAT that has been handed, is on all the fuel. On the issue of whether the ERP was abided by the law or not, I think here is the issue of what came first. Was it the ruling that came first or the ERP's pronouncement?
It's the ruling.
If it's the ruling that came first, and then there must be very good reasons why ERP decided that. I think we need to have ERP here on the panel and tell us what was it. Because I don't think it is actually general defiance or general, lack of respect for the law.
Right.
The Kenya Kwanza government is law-abiding. It was put there through the Constitution and through the law. If we went the other way, if we have to look at who actually, at the point of transition, was obeying the law, I don't think we would be having Kenya Kwanza as a government. I would be having other people in the office. So,
but what do you say? You make a very good case for VAT increment, but what do you say about the import declaration fee and the railway development levy?
All these are coming up. The idea is there are mechanisms of implementation. So I believe they are also being rolled out. But the idea is that
wait. Yeah. The Finance Act, before the stoppage, was to take effect from the 1st of July.
Yeah.
And the day before, EPRA diligently went ahead to announce the increment of VAT, said nothing about railway development levy, said nothing about import declaration fee.
Now, that is
a reduction of about 3 shillings or so.
That's again another issue that probably EPRA will answer. The reason being one, there must be a systematic way of dealing with things. We are entering into an area where we now are interrogating an institution that we are all not very clear on how they manage their business.
But I think this is why I was saying that we've had a very robust discussion on the finance bill, and the issue here really is not whether or not we should increase it. It's been increased, it is law. The question now is implementation, and implementation in the face of a court order. But then that's not the main point. The main point is the one about how do we order our tariffs. The issue about transparency on issues. We were told that yes, we've increased 16%, railway development levy has gone down, and the import declaration fee has gone down by 3%. The transparency that Kenyans need here is to tell somebody like me, an ordinary Kenyans who never went to a mathematics class, that this is how this works out. 16% brings your fuel from what it was, petrol at maybe 140 to this, yeah? And then railway development levy would bring it down. It went up by this. Railway development levy, we were told by the Chair of Finance and even the President, it went down. Import declaration gone by 3%. So the cost should have been this, less the following 4 taxes. We were told there are about 4 levies that have gone down. So when we're talking about transparency, when you're going to tax me and Kenyans on this fuel, the transparent aspect of it means what Kenyans tabulate for us in the levy tariffs that you have put for this month, that this is how it ought to have been. We nevertheless have brought down the following levies, so you're actually now paying less by this. So that Kenyans go to the fuel pump and say, yes, this went up, but this went down. So we are now paying this. So this is what, and we cannot say here that we need EPRA to come here and explain. These are things that... I would like to... Allow me to finish.
But you also cut me short.
I thought...
I mean, I was talking and then he just interjected. You never gave him the time.
I'll give you an opportunity.
Yes. So let's respect each other on the bench.
So the EPRA needs to come on the table and tell us that this is how this works out. And then they also need to come and tell us how fuel that ought to have been, because they give these tariffs that work every 14 days, isn't it? So
every 14th of
for every 14th of the month. The fuel that we are consuming now, can that fuel be subject of a 16% increase when it was already subject of the levies that was given for us, the one that operated up to I think the first of this particular month? What is usually charged is what? On landing cost, the cost of the dollar. There are many things, dynamics that we've been told, that affect the cost of fuel. Can we say that fuel that is already at your pump is subject to 16%? I think not. I think this is fuel that is either on the high seas or fuel that is supposed to be ordered. Okay. This is taxpayers' money.
Let us speak like Kenyans.
Yes,
Kenyans who understand our country very well and do know what happens. Whenever there is a proposed increment and a date is known, if the government doesn't come out strongly to manage that, to contain that, to control it, the farm prices will still have gone up. and people would have put their own prices. And then there would have been a complete chaotic situation. So that's why ERP, and I believe strongly, they came out to contain this, to manage it. Otherwise, when it comes to import declarations, and we are on the 3rd day of the implementation of this bill, on day 3. So how can we say that we are not transparent? The government is not transparent. There is time for every, I mean, there is enough. Let us give government a little bit of time to unveil all these things, and they'll be clear.
Dr. Mutunga, I don't think anyone here is denying government time. We're just raising questions.
I hear you.
According to the law that you passed, that is you as Parliament, not you as a person,
yes.
It talks about reduction to levies, increment, one tax. And therefore, because projections that have been done even by the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya was showing that the fuel would rise from 182 shillings to 193, at least in Nairobi. Now it's at 195 because it's only the VAT component that has been factored. So the other two have been left out. And we're not saying they are wrong or right. We're just asking for information. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Which I'm saying also that you have not gone far and maybe taken too long to release this information. I believe the institutions concerned will do it within a very short time. And I was trying to say that when you have a product and you want to make money from that particular product, let's say maize, you have a whole store of maize, 50,000 bucks, and the price of maize goes up. Do you say, I'll sell this maize at the former price and it is being sold today? No. You sell at the price of the day. So there's no logic in saying that we wait for fuel that will come, which you cannot even determine when it is landing, to price it. It's complicating the logistics. So whatever we have, we are raising money from what we have, my friend. And the ERP, I believe, are trying to contain an otherwise chaotic state.
But the impact is immediate. Let's listen to what the Prime Cabinet Secretary said about the decision by the courts.
It is important that the judiciary becomes alive to what we call public interest. At all times, public interest must be taken into account when decisions are made.
We also want our judiciary to be mindful of the fact that we have a country which must be run. Kenya on a daily basis, Chris Kipto will confirm to us that we collect in excess of 60 billion every day.
Well, 60 billion every day is the figure that Senator Cheriot gives. Let's see how much that would be if you had to collect 365 days times 60. That would be how much? That is how much?
These are several trillions.
Looks like it's 21.9 trillion.
Yeah, more than the budget.
Do we do that, really? No, I don't think we collect 21.9 trillion.
No. Yeah. I think he meant 6.
Yeah, probably he meant 6, but too bad. The figure is already out there. So, Honorable Basil, tell me, so there appears to be a bit of discomfort with the decision by the judiciary, and I had, who was it? Is it you who also raised a question about, yes, it was you, said that it's obnoxious, but how do we deal with separation of powers? Because parliamentarians had their say, others had their way. The president has had his way, obviously, because he's been promoting the bill. Now it's time for the judiciary to look into the nitty-gritties and see whether there is any law broken. How should government and those in government, including yourselves from parliament, treat the judiciary?
Well, I think judicially, the element of independence of judiciary must be respected. Because, as I said, if we don't respect the rule of law, then we don't have a country. That is as simple as that. So it's a matter of everyone to respect the rule of law and also the independence of judiciary. You know, there is no shortcut to it.
Okay, all right. I want us to take a break. When we come back, we have more on what has been informing conversations, and specifically, do state officers need a better pay, or is it an increment? The SRC says that they are due for one after the break.